buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
The Michael Dukes Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Dukes Show. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms.
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
Here's my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, this is for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday. Yeah, baby. You know what I'm talking about. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's right. That one day a week where you get a chance to sound off and talk about issues regarding the Second Amendment, gun rights, and so much more. So, good morning to you, my friends. How are you? Are you ready for just another beautiful day? Just another beautiful day together here as we unpack the madness that is today, the madness that is America at this time. There's some nutty stuff to go over today. There is some crazy stuff going over today. Let me tell you, I came home last night. I got home about, I don't know, it was 5:30, almost 6 o'clock. And I come home and my wife is yelling at the TV when I get home because she's watching the Muppet in Chief get up there and just do the angry old man thing, just the screed at the screen that, I mean, something like 14 times or something, 15 times, whatever it was, he referenced back to Trump and everything else. And it's just, man, I start to feel about, like we're doomed. I mean, just watching these guys yell back and forth at each other, like either one of them is going to do anything, any one of them is going to save us. That's the whole thing. You best learn to protect yourself is at this point is all I'm saying. You best learn to take care of yourself and your family and you do your own thing. Because listening to that was just, I only caught like the last 4 minutes of it or something. And I was just like, okay, I'm done. It's crazy. Anyway, that was the first thing that came to mind because he immediately went off in the State of the Union about how, we need to ban guns. This is during the he's just shouting it, when he could form a cohesive sentence. That is, he was shouting it. So we're going to talk about that. Let's see what else we got coming up today. All right, I'm sorry, Chris Cheng next hour. Chris Cheng is going to be joining us. Willie Waffle is going to be at the end of the show, and between now and then, we're going to talk about Ken Hackathorn. Ken Hackathorn, who's a famous gun sight instructor. We're also going to talk about Tommy Chong of Cheech and Chong fame. What do you care? We're going to talk a little bit about Rust, what happened, because that verdict came in this week, again, on the gun handling and everything else. And then we're going to hit a bunch of headlines, including Biden's comments at the State of the Union, this new move by the ATF to kind of vilify gun shops, and the fact that we're all being lumped into something here as gun supporters, and we're going to get into that as well. So that's it. All right, I think that's the whole thing. I didn't want to get too far ahead of myself here, and so I just didn't want to get too far ahead of myself before I got into this whole thing with Biden and the Muppet in Chief and just what he's doing. So Joe Biden, it wasn't really anything new about the gun control agenda at the State of the Union, but he did he did remind everybody. This whole thing was basically a campaign speech. I mean, it was supposed to be the State of the Union speech, but again, he spent the entire hour comparing and contrasting himself from Trump instead of the actual State of the Union. I mean, it was painful to watch. It was really painful. Even CNN analysts said that this was the most politicized State of the Union that anybody could really remember at this point, right? That the State of the Union is supposed to be this kind of hopeful thing. No, this was just all about, no, never mind. Anyway, so he didn't really say anything new in this whole thing. He just reminded everybody that he is a firm supporter of gun control. Now, he didn't do what he's done in the past, which is, you should just use a double-barreled shotgun for self-defense. He didn't, didn't say this, remember the thing that he normally says, which is, deers don't wear Kevlar. Why we need, he didn't say any of that. Instead, he tried to tie his call on a ban for quote unquote assault weapons to a drop in homicides that was seen in most states last year. He tried to take credit for the drop in crime in 2022. He tried to tie that to his Bipartisan Safers Community Act and all the money that was put in from the COVID funding. That's what he tried to tie it all together and say, this was my gun bill saved lives. My gun bill made it was a drop in homicides. And now, again, remember, you can make numbers say anything you want. The reason why there was a drop was because, of course, of the summer of unrest, the COVID, the lockdowns, crime spiraled out of control. There were riots everywhere. I mean, you saw, this was the same summer where people were calling 911 and the police were saying, sorry, folks, you're on your own. Right? I mean, do we remember all these discussions that were going on? So crime was just, and so crime spiked about the same 20% window that it did, that it has now gone down. So there was a speed bump in the crime statistics there for about 18 months, about 2 years, from 2020 to 2022. It had been before 2020, it had been on a consistent downward trend for years. And then COVID happened, and the riots and the unrest and George Floyd and the COVID lockdowns and everything else. And all of a sudden, it just went straight, just went crazy. Well, it's now come back down to, is now started to come back down to the levels it was pre-COVID. So it's, but yeah, this whole inconsistent screed that Biden laid down last night was just, don't even bother to watch it, is what I'm saying. Don't even bother. Don't even bother to watch it. It's just nothing. It's just nothing. All right. So that's the number one headline. Of course, he's just continuing on, but he wanted to take credit for this bump in, doesn't want to take credit for the spike, which is really nobody's fault. And it's not any president's fault that a spike in crime happened because of COVID. Although I would argue maybe it was because they then locked everybody in their homes. But I don't think that any president can take overall credit for either one of those things. But boy, he's going to try. He's going to try. My predecessor. How many times did he say that last night? My predecessor. I want to talk a little bit here about Ken Hackathorn. I teased this all last week, and we didn't get a chance to get into it. I want to talk a little bit about Hackathorn's commentary, which he made over at Wilson Combat at the channel. Wilson Combat has a YouTube channel that has interviews with various luminaries in the firearms community and tactical trainers. And Wilson Combat, of course, makes Wilson Combat pistols, and they are, you know, they're old hands in the business. And so they always get some of the real, you know, they've had Masad Ayub on there, and you know, again, Hackathorn, Wilson, Jerry Muesli. I mean, they've had a bunch of different people on the channel over the years doing interviews and offering commentary and everything else. And Hackathorn was on there here with one of his turns out to be one of his proteges. They're both now old men. So, I mean, they're, let me just put it this way. They made me feel young. Okay. As I was watching this, I'm like, oh man, these guys are older than dirt. I mean, I thought I was old. These guys are older than dirt. But they got up there and they had some commentary on a few things. But the one that really struck out at me during this was a discussion about firearms and flashlights, and more specifically, firearms with flashlight attachments. Now, when I first saw the clip, I was like, well, I mean, I just, you know, and I kind of just left it at that. And I was just kind of like, well, that's, you know, it's a hot take. It's a hot take that I don't agree with. In some ways, in other ways, I agree with it. And I'll describe exactly what I'm talking about here in a minute. But I'm like, oh, that's, you know, okay. So I just left it. And then Coleon Noir, if you don't follow Coleon Noir on YouTube and you're a gun enthusiast, he's always got some great, I mean, he's got a really good channel. He's a young Black Texan gun-loving lawyer. Did I throw all the labels in there all at once? He does a really good job. We've reviewed him here on the channel, on the show, and talked about his channel and everything else. But all of a sudden, I saw Coleon Noir brought this up, and he hit on exactly the same things that was bothering me. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm just not, because I thought, man, I'm just being a grumpy old man about this. I mean, I'm like, that just hit me wrong. And I'm just like, oh, but Hackathorn, he's respected, you know, and he's a luminary, and he's got all these credentials and all this, you know, big skins on the wall about all this stuff. And here I am just doing a radio show in Alaska. And I thought, well, that's just, you know, but the more that I thought about it, and then after watching Coleon's, you know, piece and him kind of picking it apart, I was like, yeah, you know, those are all the points that I would have made. That was exactly what I was thinking. And I just thought I was being grumpy. So we're going to get into that here on the other side. I promised to do it last week. I didn't promise, but I said we were going to do it last week. And I felt bad when we hit the end of the show, and just because we got carried away with phone calls. Oh, which reminds me. Oh, man, I am distracto boy this morning. Phone lines are open. 907-433-3150. 907-433-3150. If you would like to sound off on anything related to the Second Amendment, we'd love to hear from you this morning. Feel free. Now's the time to smile and dial. Just hit it right now. 907-433-3150. Phone lines are open. I'm ready. I'll take those phone calls. Bring it on. All right, we'll be back with more. Don't go anywhere. Common Sense, Liberty-Based, Free Thinking Radio, The Michael Duke Show. Back with more on this beautiful Firearms Friday.
running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Dukes Show.
Okay. Let me go back here. Watch some of the speech. What a mess, yelling at everybody. Career politician that's been nothing but trouble. Yeah, I don't know if they put the little blue pills or the little red pills, or I don't know what they put in there, but he was fired up and only mumbled a bit. I love how the talking heads are like, "Oh, he's so virile and strong and muscular," and I'm like, "What the?" I mean, who is saying stuff like, who says stuff like that? Oh, he's so strong and virile and muscular and I'm just like, I mean, would you like to go lay down with him? Is that what you're looking for here? I mean, it was just like, this is a speech. What would I don't even know. Well, Mike, what can anyone expect from the mumbler in chief? He can't tout policy success or talk about things being great. So all he has is finger pointing. Yeah, I mean, it just was just like Rick says possibly the worst State of the Union speech in history. I think that was kind of some of the general consensus, even from some of the talking heads at CNN were like, well, that was something. That was kind of crazy. Let's meeting. Good morning. Amy says, I didn't watch it. You didn't miss much. Let's see. Republican women of Fairbanks say that Leslie Hajdukovich is speaking in the back room of Mayan Palace on March 20th. Okay. I did not see the rebuttal. Alabama Senator Katie Britt did an outstanding rebuttal, said David. I did not see the rebuttal. Robert, I love how you just like drop in the room and then just like random stuff. He says, Diamond teacher, OnlyFans porn site. That's the thing. There was a teacher at Diamond High School, or an employee, it was reported, that has been suspended pending an investigation. If that turns out, she would not be, or he or she would not be the first teacher to be fired for having an OnlyFans site. That's been happening more and more, apparently, across the country. Okay, I'm waiting, says Jeannie. Tell me why you are anti or pro gun light. Oh, I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm going to tell you all about my thoughts on it. So it's, 50 years in DC, and he likes to blame a guy that was there 4 years for not fixing problems that he and his co-clowns have created. Ooh, that's it. That's, that's the thing. And all the Dems jumped up and down. And my wife's comment, she goes, if I watch Kamala Harris bounce back up out of her chair one more time to clap with it was the same thing Pelosi was doing. And I mean, it's just such smoke and mirrors, folks. It really is. It really, I can't. Brian says that's proof that we need to pay teachers more. The fact that teachers are getting busted for having an OnlyFans account. Well, it wasn't all here in the state of Alaska. It's been happening across the nation. I think it's an indicator more of our morality and mindset more than anything else. I don't think it necessarily has to do with. I'm sure the money's fine, though. I'm sure the money's fine. So it's just sure the money's nice from the OnlyFans account. All right. What else we got here? I guess we're gonna get into this thing with Tommy Chong. Yes. And I did see this article in Bearing Arms. How much time I got? I only got 30 seconds. About a British historian claims that the founders would be opposed to the Second Amendment movement. Wow, that's a reading that I never saw coming. All right, we're gonna have to get back into this. We will return the Michael Duke Show, Firearms Friday, common sense, liberty based, free thinking radio. Let's do the thing. You ready? Let's go. Right now. Here we go.
What the hell is an assault weapon? Does that mean that if we hurt your feelings, you should consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can accept that. Here's Michael Dukes. Kind of a dick, but somewhat funny.
What? I mean, that, man, that's hurtful. It's really hurtful. All right. We are we've got more coming up here. Oh my God. We've got some discussions, but right before the break, we were talking about this commentary from Ken Hackathorn, who is a pretty well-known gun sight instructor. I think he did some things at Thunder Ranch. He's a LEO. He's been known in the industry for many years. And he was on Wilson Combat's YouTube channel, and they were having a discussion about, they were having a discussion about a bunch of different things, tactical attachments and things like that. And Hackathorn got off into the weeds a little bit about flashlights. And I'm just going to play you kind of the whole thing. It's edited slightly for clarity and time, but it's not, I haven't put any words in his mouth or anything. But I want you to listen to this, because the first time I heard this, I was like, what? That doesn't, what? So I'm listening to this, and I want to, again, there are things that I agree with that he says in here, and there's things that he doesn't. So I'm going to break it all down here as we go through. But this is Ken Hackathorn on Wilson Combat's channel on YouTube, talking about tactical attachments. I don't know if that's what he was calling it, but flashlights is what we're talking about. Here we go.
Mounting a light on a pistol. What is your view of the pluses and minuses of a light on a handgun? What I tell people is, now everybody wants to be a cool kid and have all these gadgets in a gun. Okay, you carry a gun, and especially if you're in the private sector, you're not a soldier, you're not, in law enforcement. If you carry a gun with a light on it, when's the last time you needed that? And most people, if they're honest, will tell you, well, not really. I had a guy tell me, well, yeah, but if I have to change a tire, I go, are you an idiot?
But you know that's happened.
Oh, I remember seeing a picture in a newspaper it was an accident scene. Individual was being, treated by the medics, the EMT guys that showed up. And here's a police officer with his pistol, light on, doing this so they can see what they're doing. And I remember I cut out the paper. I don't know where it's at, but I thought, okay, this is what you're not supposed to do. The bottom line is, I think lights in today's world are extremely overrated.
So now they did go on later in this discussion, and this discussion goes on for about 10, 12 minutes. They did go on and talk about, handheld light sources rather than lights on firearms and everything else. But he basically is saying that lights on guns are highly overrated. To which I am going to respectfully disagree. But I wanted to take a minute for some of because sometimes I think people get so cooked into their own biases. There's a couple things that I want to point out here on this that kind of the tonality of what's going on. Now, Hackathorn is currently training. I think he's an instructor for the FBI right now, but he's been involved with law enforcement and military for many years. Again, he's also a gun sight instructor, so he's been in the private sector, but he's going on and talking about this. But there's this one segment of this that I listened to, and I actually went back and listened to it a couple times because I'm like, why is that hitting me so wrong? Why does that? And I finally came to me that it was because it was almost this disdainful tone. This is the part that I'm talking about.
Okay, you carry a gun, and especially if you're in the private sector, you're not a soldier, you're not, in law enforcement. If you carry a gun with a light on it, when's the last time you needed that?
Because it was like, oh, so you're just, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, and maybe I'm getting all bent out of shape about it, a little butthurt, but it's like, well, you're a private citizen. You're not a professional like military and law enforcement. When was the last time you needed to pull out that gun? To which, my first question is, well, how many times have you? How many times has anybody in the course of their day-to-day lives how many times in the course of day-to-day lives have people needed a fire extinguisher? Does that mean that it makes it any less useful when the time is right? Right? So again, he starts off with this whole idea of, if you're just you're just an average citizen.
Okay, you carry a gun, and especially if you're in the private sector, you're not a soldier, you're not, in law enforcement. If you carry a gun with a light on it, when's the last time you needed that?
So that was the beginning of it. But see, then later on in his little story, in his confessional here, he tells the story about somebody who is, are you an idiot? In fact, he says, because there's a police officer using the gun as a flashlight, not as a,
It was an accident scene. Individual was being, treated by the medics, the EMT guys that showed up. And here's a police officer with his pistol, light on, doing this so they can see what they're doing. And I remember I cut out the paper. I don't know where it's at, but I thought, okay, this is what you're not supposed to do.
But yet in the beginning, you said, if you're not in law enforcement or the military, you don't really need a light. But yet at the same time, you're highlighting somebody who, you see what I'm saying? Now, they went on to talk about handheld light sources. So, offhand lights, having a second light and everything else. But I'm just going to say this. We live, first of all, in Alaska, maybe it's a little bit different because it's dark 7 months of the year, right? It's 9:00 in the morning and it's dark out. It's 3:00 in the afternoon and it's dark out. So living here and having that kind of light, first and foremost, this makes sense to me because what's one of the rules of gun safety, right? To be aware of your target and what is beyond it, right? To be sure of what you're pointing at and what is beyond it. If it's 6:00 on a Thursday night in the middle of December and you're off the road somewhere or it's dark. It's dark, right? Now, does that mean that the weapons light is the end all be all? Absolutely not. But it does a couple things. First of all, it is the ultimate disorienter. It is the ultimate surprise, non-lethal deterrent. If you're sneaking around somewhere in your house because you've heard some bad guy, or you're, in a situation where it's a stalk one way or the other, the minute that you're looking at somebody and you could see them and you could, with a good weapons light, a good firearms light, you could nearly burn the retina straight out of somebody's head. Now, not really, but you know what I mean? It's blinding. It's disorienting. They don't know what's going on. And you can see everything that's there. But, they did bring up some interesting points. If somebody is ready and prepared, if the light is on the weapon, they can shoot at the position of the light, and that could be shooting you. So maybe you do offhand. My solution to that is twofold. I believe 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So what does that mean? Well, it means that not only do I have a firearms light I don't have a weapons light on my firearm. I also have a Surefire light on my belt in a little tiny, looks like a little pocket knife holster. And I also, in fact, I carry a third light, a little stream light micro that I've had for years. So you can't see it on the radio, but it was jet black at one point, and now it's so beat up. But guess what? Still works every day. Still works every day, and I use it multiple times a week when I'm looking for something, especially when it's the winter and it's dark and I'm looking for something. So I understand some of the points that they were trying to make. But the problem is that this 12-minute interview got clipped out. And the 1-minute segment that got clipped out is Hackathorn basically saying flashlights on firearms are stupid. Again, to which I totally disagree. If you haven't been trained, especially if you are not as trained on your firearm as you should be to be able to shoot one-handed, maybe you've only been taught or only had enough training to be able to reliably shoot with two hands. Maybe having a flashlight on your pistol is the only way to, for you to be able to shoot accurately and still be able to see. I mean, it'd be nice to be able to hold the pistol or hold the flashlight off to your side at 90 degrees, 2 feet away from your pistol and shoot with one hand on the pistol. But some people are just they haven't had that much training or they haven't had that much practice on that. Having a light on the pistol, again, and there's right tools for the right job. I'm not using my pistol light to change my tire or to check somebody's, injury or to, check to see if my kid's, teeth are washed or whatever it is that I'm doing in the thing. I mean, that's just, there's a point of stupidity there, right? That was what do they call that? They call that reducto reductum, it's the reduction to the ridiculous. It's crazy that those are the kind of stories that actually come out there. But this idea that somehow firearms, weapons lights are completely useless. And they actually went on to talk about other things. And I know in the past there's been a discussion about like laser pointers and things like that. Look, there's a time and place for all those things. Crimson Trace, we talked about those, the rubberized grips for pistols that have the built-in laser on the they have the built-in laser in the pistol grip so that it points where the pistol's, it's target on thing. It is, it's great. I've never had one personally, but I know that some people have had them because one, they have a hard time seeing the front sights because of their vision, but they can see the dot. I've had people make the argument that, well, if they fall down and they can't get a proper sight picture because, maybe say an assailant pushes them down the stairs and they hit the ground or they hit the landing and they're on the ground and they can't fully extend to get a full sight picture, they could still, even if they're not looking down the bore of the gun, they could still point it with the laser at the assailant. I mean, there could be arguments for everything good. There's nothing that is 100% all the time. I have had a firearm. I've had a weapon on my weapons light on my flashlight, or a weapons light on my pistol, a flashlight on my pistol for 12 years. I use it. I trained it. My custom holster is built for it. And I have it on there simply because I might need it. Now, I also carry other flashlights. Right? So now I've got a multiplicity of choices. I don't just choose one. I'm damn sure not pointing my pistol underneath the seat of my car to see if I can find that whoozy what's it that I lost under there with my flashlight. I'm using my other flashlight. GD says, let's settle this. The first muzzle flash is off-putting as well. Yeah, I mean, first of all, you get hit in the full in the face with a SL1 Streamlight weapons light. First of all, you'll be dazzled by that. The second dazzle would be the muzzle flash. Yeah, absolutely. I get you what you're talking about there. I got there. She also said he's not talking to Alaskans. Hackathorn's not talking. No, but it's in general. And the worst part was that this thing got clipped out. And that was what they were highlighting on YouTube. Because I saw it several times. I saw that clip 3 or 4 times. And it just didn't sit right with me, the way that the whole thing hit. And then And I thought, well, I'm being so sensitive. Just being sensitive. And then I saw Coleon Noir was a little tweaked about it as well. And I'm like, well, maybe I wasn't being sensitive. Maybe I'm, trained. Bill says he trained with his stream light in his offhand underneath my shooting hand. Light aims will run pistol aims. Yes. I mean, and that's great. You can do that. Their argument is that if you had a light on your weapon, though, you could draw fire to yourself, and therefore you needed a offhand flashlight to be able to hold it out to the side and shoot and be able to shoot. What they actually went on to talk about how important it was to be able to shoot one-handed, which I agree with. But at the same time, you also shoot, underneath it. They're all useful. Let me just put it that way. Let me just say what Hackathorn didn't say, which is there is a time and place for all of those tools. If you have, especially if you live in a place where it's dark all the time, it makes sense. All right. Glad I got that off my chest. That was bugging me. I didn't realize how much that was bugging me until I started talking about it. And again, I like Hackathorn. I think he's a great guy. Just in this case, I think the media team or whoever was editing it and then posting it up on the internet, I think they wanted to generate some outrage and get a little bit of a hot take going on it. Success. They did it. Tritium sights are great. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, all those things are good, including a weapons light. If you think. And Charlie says, I think a laser is a potential deterrent. Well, if you've watched any movie, you know that a laser is a potential deterrent. That's why I have a laser pointer in my pocket. No gun, just a laser pointer. That's a deterrent right there. All right. Like one of those ones you make the cats chase. I just have that. Don't think that might not work sometime. All right, I got one line on hold. And we're going to get to them here in just a minute. We'll be back when we return. They'll be first up in the queue. So caller, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more Firearms Friday right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, let's go over to the phones and see who is on the blower. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Michael. This is Rod in North Pole.
Hello, my friend.
Comment about Mr. Hackathorn.
Okay, good. Well, you hold the line there. You're gonna be number one with a bullet, and we'll come back to that. I would definitely want to get your hot take on this, for sure. Jeannie said, but doesn't the clip tell you it's anti-gunners trying to make him look like the boomer who's gone crazy? Well, I would say that, except for the clip was pulled out from Wilson Combat. It was like a short that Wilson Combat put out as part of the YouTube Shorts program, right? That was one of them. And then there was another one that it was being carried by somebody else. But, I mean, that was kind of like, yeah, okay, boomer. It was, it kind of felt like that. It kind of felt like something that was trying to, create this divide inside the gun community. I mean, I wasn't mad about it. I just thought, well, that was I just kind of disagreed with him. It kind of stuck in my craw a little bit. I wasn't mad. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so angry, and then I'm just like, yeah. And then I watched it and I saw it again. Okay. And then I saw the Coleon Noir video and I thought, well, again, maybe I thought it was just me. I thought maybe I was just being grumpy about it. And, Coleon was that, you're not a boomer, Greg. You're not a boomer. Greg, it's good to be a boomer. You're not a boomer. You're Gen X, man. Right? You're Gen X. I'm not a boomer. Oh, well, okay. All right. 62. I thought it was 19. Well, maybe you are. I retract my previous statement and offer my apologies. I thought, because that would have made it. Okay, you are. You're right. You are a boomer. Wilson is so proud of their pistols, they don't want you to hang junk on them. Yes, that is true. That is true. They are so proud of their pistols, they don't want you to put anything on them at all. Math is hard, Greg. Well, first of all, you should take it as a compliment because I thought you were younger than that. So there you go. That's pretty. And Chris is also a boomer. Okay, everybody on this show is apparently a boomer but me. Am I the young kid at 53, 50, 50, 54? I'm doing the maths here. Maths are hard, as Greg said earlier. Maths are hard. 54. Yeah, okay. I'm Gen X, so it's, but apparently everybody else is a boomer here. So that's okay. Baby boomer. But, it's like the veteran bod, the dad bod veteran. I mean, that's funny. All right. Okay. So there are some Gen X out there. We're the FAFO generation. Yeah. You are the young pup, says Gary. Sorry, I can't hear you. Damn you and your grumpiness, you boomers. All right. That's fine. That's fine. All right. Okay. You young kids with your loud rock and roll. Double nickel. Kyle's a double nickel. Well, that'll be me this year. Right? Because it's 4 and 9. Oh, I'll be 54 this year. I'm 53 right now. Be 54 this year. 69, baby. All the way. Born in 69. Was the summer of 69. Right? That song speaks to my heart. Okay. So we are ready to go. Ron is on hold. We're less than 60 seconds. 60 seconds. We're going to be jumping back into this. Long hair freaky people now needed. What? Bill says I'm going to be 59 soon. Well, Bill, at least you're self-aware, Bill. He says, I'm going to be 59 soon, and I'm an a-hole. Okay, well, at least you're, again, self-aware. Who let the dogs out? You not a boomer, what? Okay, yeah, okay. Thanks for putting that song in my head for the rest of the day. All right, we're going to jump back into it here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Ron's our guest. Up next, let's get to it. Here we go.
What the hell's an assault weapon? What isn't? If I assault you with a penguin, doesn't that make it an assault weapon? Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
I mean, I'm assuming that if you hit somebody with a penguin, that could really hurt. I mean, depending on which end of the penguin. I don't know how you'd hold on to the top end. Maybe by the wings, but I don't know. Just show me on this doll where I hurt your feelings. Just show me on this doll where I hurt your feelings. All right, we got to continue on here. We got one line on hold. Ron is up in North Pole, and he wanted to talk a little bit about Hackathorn in the comments we were just discussing on the flashlights. Ron, what is on your mind, my friend?
Well, I come from the generation that is often not mentioned. That would be the silent generation.
The silent generation.
So
Okay.
we have a date now. But,
All right.
I have been a fan of Mr. Hackathorn for a number of years. And I would have to say that a lot of his thinking reflects him being dated. He's a very, very learned person, but I recall an article that was on a completely different subject, that of red dots, and he basically had the same thing to say about red dots that he did about flashlights. And having been raised on front sight press, I can say that it took me a very long time to overcome that and use a red dot. However, I believe now that I am more accurate and faster with a red dot. So you have to take Mr. Hackathorn's genealogy or generation with a grain of salt.
Right. And I mean, I think he made some valid points about the downsides of lights. You know, they could be drawing a source of fire, and, you know, they can't be, you know, but, and you should have a secondary offhand flashlight. I mean, I agree with all those things, but it was just kind of that dismissive aspect. And especially the comment in that little 12-second clip where he says, you know, if you're just a private citizen and not a military and law enforcement, when was the last time you, and I'm like, well, when was the last time you used your gun, you know, in the course of your, I mean, that to me, it just kind of was one of those elitist kind of attitudes of, unless you're a special operator, you don't need any of this stuff. And I think somebody else made a comment in the chat room during the break that said, Wilson loves Wilson Combat makes those fancy pistols. They don't want you to hang anything off of them. So that was a hot take that they probably approved of.
But, well, and I would also interject that with a handheld flashlight, you always have the option of the Harry's technique, so it can be used both ways.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, that's true. I could also, if I have both a handheld flashlight and a weapons light, I could actually do both. I mean, I could do it one-handed with an offhand flashlight and a light on the, I mean, I could really create some confusion, right? You know what I mean? You could really create some havoc there if you wanted to. But yeah, like you said,
absolutely. I begin to wonder when we're going to come to the point where we won't need the gun at all. We'll simply burn them to death with the lumens.
Oh man, I've seen some of these newer flashlights where they're like, I mean, they're like scorching the wall with a flashlight. And I'm like, okay, that me getting to the point of ridiculousness. Okay. I don't think, you know, nobody needs a bottled stick of sunshine. So, all right. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it.
All right. I'll cut you loose, Michael.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for calling in. And I would agree with you that Hackathorn does seem like a bit of a grumpy, I mean, again, the grumpy old boomer who's just like, that's not the way we did it back in my day, so it's crap. But he is, again, he's probably forgotten more than I have ever been taught about firearms. He's probably forgotten more than I have, but I've got to just, you know, I've got to do it. Imagine how the penguin feels. Where is your sensitivity? I just don't care. Red dots are handy for boomers, says Greg. He said they're handy for us boomers. Yeah, I mean, red dots, those high vis sights, flashlights, lasers. I mean, all of those could be useful in one form or another. Again, you can't. You know, it's always about absolutism, right? In many circles. It's the Ford versus Chevy. It's the, Glock versus Colt. It's the 9mm versus 45, although I will fight you on that one. But it's always about how it's being used, in what context, and what's going on. You know, the problem with the thing that is kind of the kind of good at everything is that really it's not, it's adequate at everything, but it's great at nothing. Right. And then you've got specialty equipment that is great at one or two specific things, but totally crap at something else. So you're always looking at that kind of mix and match, and you're trying to balance whatever you're doing with the proper tools for the job. And it, again, I just saw this and I thought, I think the biggest thing that triggered me was kind of the elitist attitude towards just people, maybe just average people who are going to be using it on their own.
Okay, you carry a gun, and especially if you're in the private sector, you're not a soldier, you're not, in law enforcement. If you carry a gun with a light on it, when's the last time you needed that?
To me, that just sounds like, okay, well, apparently we're not special enough. We're not smart enough. We're not special enough to be able to have a light because we don't use our gun on a daily basis. Although if you had a police officer that used his gun on a daily basis, I mean, outside of just wearing it, then maybe there would be a deeper problem there. I mean, it's, I just don't know. Don't know. So anyway, that's good. That's the end of that discussion. What was the other discussion? Oh, yeah, I did want to talk a little bit about this, and I do have some other stories, and we're going to get to Chris Cheng as well today. But I did want to get to this. I don't know if you're a fan of the Joe Rogan podcast, but I listen when I can, which is not nearly enough. But
if you have a gun, you're not very intelligent.
Why's that?
Because you're paranoid. If you think you need a gun for your house, for whatever, if you think you have something that's worth someone else's life, then you are ignorant.
Oh, I've got questions. I have got questions and comments for Mr. Tommy Chong, who was on Joe Rogan's podcast recently, and they went on for quite a while. I couldn't listen to the whole thing. I could not listen to the whole thing because, well, one, I never found Cheech and Chong to be that entertaining, quite honestly. I mean, you can only take so much of, hey, I'm so stoned I can't even think straight. But secondly, I just can't look at this guy and take him seriously when that's all he's done in his life, and that's how he's done. I mean, the guy has smoked a pickup truck load full of marijuana in his life, I guarantee it, and is got the brain cells to prove it. Let me just, again, here's the proof, all the proof you need.
If you have a gun, you're not very intelligent.
Why's that?
Because you're paranoid. If you think you need a gun for your house, for whatever, if you think you have something that's worth someone else's life, then you are ignorant.
I have so much commentary around that 12-second statement right there. We will return and discuss that in just a minute, probably closer to a semi-truckload. That's true. Probably closer to a trailer truckload than a pickup truckload. Hour 2 dead ahead, The Michael Duke Show. I mean, and paranoid. I mean, there's a guy that should know paranoid. I definitely, am concerned about. I got something in my water here. I just saw something flash in my water and realized. It's the fluoride in the water turning the frogs gay. Just kidding. I'm just seeing if you're paying attention. I'd like to know how many officers have a flashlight on their pistol. I don't know. And quite honestly, I don't care. I don't model myself after police officers. So I don't know and I don't care. Those are my two answers to that. I mean, I'd like to know how many people carry a flashlight, in their belt, readily accessible. And I think I hate it that I need to make that commentary. Like the one on my belt is readily accessible, which I will put on when I go put my pistol on here this morning on my way out the door. Because they're sitting right next to each other, flashlight, pistol, one on one side, one on the other. The other one is in my pocket, the little streamlight that I just showed you. I mean, I carry that with me, just 24/7, 365. So, I mean, that if I'm standing up, I can get to that in about 3 or 4 seconds. But the one right off the belt, you can rip that off the belt right away. But if I needed something like right now, I do have the weapons light if I'm like facing a threat or there's, gunfire or shouting or screaming or something like that. So you've got multiple options that are going on there. Jeannie says, why would you want to disorient? Well, she says, explain to me why disorientation is a tactic. Under what condition is disorientation a priority? Well, if you're taking somebody by surprise in your home, there's an intruder sneaking around and you are able to surprise them with a light, because I would travel in the dark is what I would do in my house, because I know my house and they don't. And I'm able to point the light directly at their eyes and push the button on it, either on my standalone light or on the weapons light. That moment of disorientation can give you a second to assess the entire situation while their brain is a little confused and muddled. Disorientation is not a bad thing when it gives you an advantage over the other guy. Being disoriented is not a bad thing. I don't know if it's a tactic or not, but I'll use anything I can get. Greg did say that it breaks the OODA loop, which is the OODA loop is the observe, orient, decide, and act, OODA. And yeah, if you get a 1,000,000 kilowatt light or million candle power light shined in your eyes, it does have a tendency to break the OODA loop a little bit. It does, because you're observing, orienting, and it can stagger you. I get that. But yeah, it's definitely definitely an interesting thing. Anyway, and everybody's giving, and Tawny's talking about the OODA loop in here as well. All right. It breaks focus, visual as well as mental. Yeah. Greg said it better than I did. There you go. Cheating is not looked down on in a gunfight. If you find yourself in a fair fight, you did not plan well enough. You have made a serious error. If you find yourself in a fair fight, you made a mistake somewhere. Should always be an unfair fight. That is one of my favorite sayings of all times. The big 4D mag cell light can settle a lot of arguments. You mean as a blunt instrument? Sure. But as far as a light source, there are lights that are much smaller, more agile, that can do better than a 4D mag light. If you want to use it carry a bludgeon with you and use it as a light at the same time, you're right, 100%. Yep. Tawny says this tactic is trained in a mass shooting response. It's similar to throwing an object at an intruder. Yeah. Again, distraction is, whatever. I carry a flashlight, says Terry. I carry multiple lights, one in my pocket, one on my EDC, and one in all the vehicles I drive. That's exactly it, Terry. Semper Fi, by the way, brother. I agree. That's exactly it. I got another one in my car. I got one on my belt, one in my pocket, one on my gun. Why? I just don't know. I might need more. It's dark here a lot. Just never saw the need to have to not have another light somewhere. And of course, then you got your one on your phone, right? Right? You get people talk about that, but Okay. Do I want to talk about Tommy Chong next, or do I want to get into this discussion about feds lump gun rights supporters in with violent extremists? This is from the National Review. Do you want to talk about that instead of Tommy Chong? I'm trying to decide here. I could mix and match a couple stories here to put this together. But we'll... We'll see. All right, here we go. Getting back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
The Michael Duke Show.
I have 2 guns, one for each of you.
Firearms Friday.
As Thomas Jefferson stated, it is the right and duty of the people to be at all times armed.
Say hello to my little friend.
I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all.
The Michael Duke Show.
The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Firearms
From my cold, dead hands.
Friday.
It's my rifle, this is my gun. This is for fighting, this is for fun.
Firearms Friday.
Firearms Friday. Your chance to sound off on issues of a two-way nature right here on the Michael Duke Show. Just another beautiful day in paradise. Hour 2 of the big radio broadcast today for Firearms Friday. And we are ready to go. All right, look, I took a little bit of a poll during the break, and I came back, and there's still some other stories I want to get to, but I've got Chris Cheng coming up, and then we got to finish up with Willie Waffle. I've already got all this stuff planned out. And so I'm not going to spend – I could spend another segment just talking about Tommy Chong, but I do want to get to some of these other stories. Let me just say this. This is the segment – this is the clip that I played earlier about Tommy Chong, and
if you have a gun, you're not very intelligent.
Why's that?
Because you're paranoid. If you think you need a gun for your house, for whatever, if you think you have something that's worth someone else's life, then you are ignorant.
Okay, so first and foremost, everything that I have in my home, including my family, everything, my domicile, that's worth anybody else's life. I just want to make that clear. If my family's in danger, you're going to break into my house with me in it for whatever reason. I don't care if you're just trying to steal a donut off the kitchen table. Your life is forfeit, okay? Because that's my domicile. That's my castle. That's my personal space where all the laws in the world basically say you are not welcome, and you know it, and you've decided to throw that away. Your life is forfeit. Sorry. Potentially. I mean, you're taking your life in your own hands going in something like that. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Second of all, having a gun does not make you paranoid, because that'd be like saying anybody that has a fire extinguisher or a smoke detector is paranoid. You may need it. You may not. You may need it. You may not. And I did love the fact that Chong got called out by Joe Rogan about it. Like this.
Right, but if someone has a gun in their house to protect themselves from home invasions do happen. And people have saved their family with guns. That's a real thing.
Well, you don't read about that much.
Oh, you read about it plenty if you go looking for it.
Really?
Yeah, there's
Someone
plenty of
come in the
stories.
house,
Yeah, if you go looking for it. Now, the mainstream media doesn't push that narrative. But, I mean, here's a guy that's basically stating, so if you have a gun in your home, you're ignorant. And then he shows his ignorance on the whole thing on the other side. So you're right. The chat room is like, this guy's not relevant anymore. I don't care about it. And you're right. I'm listening. I was just listening to it, and I'm like, here's some stoner telling me how ignorant we all are because we shouldn't just kumbaya and whatever. Anyway, so Tommy Chong, Joe Rogan, that's done. It took me longer to edit those clips than it did to actually discuss it. So that's fine, but that's okay. I do want to get to talk about this story. The ATF released, USA Today released the names of the 1,300 or so federally licensed firearm dealers who are on the ATF's Demand 2 list. Now, I don't remember if you if you saw this story back in February, the ATF created a list called Demand 2, which is a list of FFLs that have had at least 25 guns traced within 3 years of their original date of purchase, and they're placed on this list. If there's a gun trace placed on any gun from a gun store, if you got 25 guns from your gun store are traced in a year or within 3 years, then you're on this secondary list. Now, the ATF officials said that, there's a number of factors to people who are on this list, including geography, sales volume, secondary, market transfers by the original purchaser, the level of sophistication of the firearm trackers. He says, all that being said, the Demand 2 list itself is not an indication of wrongdoing. But yet, all the media outlets are now treating anybody who's on this list like they are some kind of bad seed, sleazy gun dealer who just sells willy-nilly to every criminal in the neighborhood. Interestingly enough, though, Cam Edwards over at Bearing Arms has got an article up about this, where he quotes LEPD Firearms and Ranger co-founder Eric Delbert, who's the owner of LEPD Firearms, said he got a call this week from a reporter from the Columbus Dispatch who's penning a story of their own based on this original Demand 2 list report, and wanted to know why Eric Delbert's shop is, quote, selling so many guns to criminals. Delbert says that he was informed by the ATF last year that LEPD was going on the Demand 2 list after 30 crime guns, quote unquote, had been traced back to their store. Delbert, who, by the way, is still a uniformed law enforcement officer, in addition to running the store in the range, said he couldn't believe it. So he asked the ATF for the serial numbers of the firearms that were traced and started doing his own investigating. What he found is that the ATF is labeling traced firearms that have no connection to a crime at all as crime guns, and then using those traces to put stores under the microscope. He said their definition of a crime gun, and he said, I'm going to read it verbatim from their email, is, quote, any firearm that is illegally possessed, used in a crime, or suspected by law enforcement of being used in a crime, unquote. That's what they're... But he said he was able to determine that at least one of the crime guns traced back to his store came from a collection that had been voluntarily and temporarily turned over to a police department by someone who was going through a divorce and wanted to ensure his guns were safely secured during the process. When he asked for his gun backs, one or more of the guns were traced. He said, just because there's the police report, by the way, he said, from that police department shows that the subject of the trace request was a recovered firearm and explicitly mentions that there was no crime involved in the trace, yet those firearms become part of the crime guns that cause the ATF to scrutinize his business even more. He then determined that 3 other guns traced back to his store had been stolen from their owners' vehicles, meaning he sold them to lawful legal customers, and then 2 others had been taken as part of a drunk driving investigation. Those aren't crime guns, at least not in the terms that you and I would think about guns used in crimes. But the ATF's determination that his business should still be put. So this is the way that these people are working. That they are treating, they're manipulating everything and doing. And then we see this. The term violent extremist is now being used to lump together conservative positions on guns and immigration. According to the National Review, federal law enforcement lumped together conservative positions on guns and immigration with violent extremism in guidance given to financial institutions to help them monitor people's transactions, according to a congressional investigation. The House Judiciary Committee and its Weaponization Subcommittee released a report Wednesday detailing the efforts by federal agencies and large financial institutions to surveil Americans' private financial transactions in the wake of January 6th. Soon after the Capitol protest, the FBI, the DHS, the National Counterterrorism Terrorism Center created an intelligence document that was titled Domestic Violent Extremists Likely Emboldened in Aftermath of Capitol Breach. The FBI shared the file with financial institutions to help them profile potential domestic extremists, according to the report. The FBI also sent the intelligence document to other private companies with membership in the Domestic Security Alliance Council, an FBI and DHS portal that includes more than 650 large private companies. This FBI intelligence product, along with other materials shared by the federal law enforcement agencies, detail the extent to which federal law enforcement derisively viewed American citizens, according to the report. Federal law enforcement used this report and materials like it to commandeer financial institutions' databases and ask the financial institutions to conduct sweeping searches of individuals not suspected of committing any crimes. The intelligence brief suggested that outside pressures prompting domestic violent extremist DVEs to engage in political violence during firearm legislation, the easing of immigration restrictions, and the new limits on the use of public lands. So basically, there isn't anyone who's anyone who isn't in the left, who isn't progressive, is apparently some kind of domestic terrorist. And probably even some because if you're talking about new limits on the use of public lands, there might be some progressives who are up in arms about that. They don't want to have limits on the use of public. I mean, essentially, when you criminalize everything, everyone's going to become a criminal. I mean, and the problem is that you got issues here where they're having a hard time painting shades of gray. And when the agencies themselves are painting outside the lines, for example, in the ATFs, all this gun trace information that are guns that really aren't crime guns, when the FBI is breaking into safety deposit box buildings under a warrant that specifically denies them the ability to search everything else, and yet they do, and then confiscate it. When they use FISA warrants without the proper authorization, and they're using broad sweeping stuff to sweep stuff together. I mean, who's watching the watchers? That's my question. Who's watching the watchers? I got a call on hold, and I got Chris Cheng coming up in just a hot second, so let's go over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, it's Fred. How you been?
Hey, Fred. Quickly, what's on your mind, my friend? We got about 2.5 minutes here.
I think class action lawsuit's going to be the answer to that problem. I think it's time to come down on them like a ton of bricks. That will definitely put them in their place.
I would like to think that something like that might work, although I don't know what the class action lawsuit would be specifically. But I mean, I think my advice, Fred, is just prepare yourself for be ready for anything, I guess is what I would say. Just, throw a few extra cans of ramen on the shelf and maybe make sure your mortgage is paid down, and, just do the old things that the old Depression era folks would do to take care of themselves. Make sure you got a little bit of everything, and you know how to do a little bit of everything. And
but you got to remember something about the Depression era. The Depression era and Prohibition kind of went hand in hand.
That's true.
People gave the government the middle finger.
That's true.
So we're going to go back to those days. I think class action lawsuit, especially not only on the government entities, but the media itself. I mean, they like to stir up the pot and cause a lot of the problems. The ATF laid out their agenda, saying, that they're not necessarily going to target the gun owners as doing anything, malicious. However, the media sit there and fill in the blanks. So I think they definitely should be, they definitely should have a lawsuit thrown on them once in a while, put them in their place. If you want to hear somebody bad, kick them in the pocketbook. That they remember that. They will definitely remember that.
Well, that's right. I mean, you got to make them feel the pain somehow, and a lot of times the pocketbook is the best way to do it. I don't know if there's, I mean, I just don't know if the momentum, one side or the other is too far gone. All I know is that I'm doing everything I can to just make sure that I spend as much time with my family as I can, and we've got everything we need to just in case everything, whatever. I just that's all I can think of right now, because when they're doing stuff like this, where they're on the one hand using shady procedures to try and paint FFLs, for example, in a bad light, and yet on the other hand, they got federal agencies that are reaching out to financial institutions to try and lump you in because you happen to be a gun fan, because you happen to like to go shooting or you want to protect yourself, but now they're lumping you in with violent extremists just by association. There's something bad wrong there, Fred. Bad wrong. All right, Fred, thank you so much for your call. I appreciate you calling in and joining us. We got to go here. Chris Cheng is up next. The Michael Duke Show continues. It is your home for common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return to more right after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes. Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, I think I lost the audio for Fred there for a minute. I don't know if he could not hear me or I couldn't hear him or whatever. But anyway, Leela says several thousand people party to a suit saying they were falsely accused of crimes might take a Bill Satterberg kind of lawyer, but I think Fred might be on to something nonviolent that we can do. It's possible. I mean, yeah, that's possible for sure. Jeannie says these lawsuits have been filed all over the country. I haven't heard of them, but what's the outcome been? Has there been any success? I mean, obviously not at this point. I mean, obviously not. Oh, man. And Armed NAK drops that famous quote, when the government fears its citizens, you have freedom. When the citizens fear the government, you have tyranny. And that's where we're at. I mean, essentially, look, I know that I've been on a list for years. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I actually had somebody who told me when I was in Fairbanks and I was doing the show in Fairbanks, apparently the folks at the local ATF office would actually listen to the show on Fire on Fridays and take notes on the things that I said. They were like, I had somebody who worked in government come to me and say, you got to be careful, because we're all on a list. But the fact that they're out there now lumping anybody who's who's into gun rights, who's into who's worried about immigration and all these things, and they're lumping all of us in as extremists on that kind of situation. It just seems, well, I mean, it's first of all, it's a little horrific that they would just lump everybody together because somebody happens to like guns or wants to be able to defend themselves, and know all of a sudden they're violent extremists. I mean, but I talk to Chris Cheng, I don't look at him and think, boy, there's a violent extremist, but yet he and I would be in the same boat just because we both happen to like the same inanimate object, the same tool. I mean, could you imagine saying that anybody that uses a power saw is a violent extremist because they used a power? Well, they did do that to the wood. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, let's jump over here. Chris Cheng is our guest. He's in here, and you violent extremist, you man. What's going on?
Yeah, thanks for putting me on the list. I'm sure I was already on the list though before I come to talk on your show.
The minute that you showed up on Top Shot, they're like, oh, now we have an Asian that we can add to the quotiont over here.
Yeah,
kind
exactly.
of thing.
Now we have to worry about Asians, gun owners. Oh my gosh, we're gonna take over the country.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen this, right? I mean, we heard the whole Obama bitterly clinging to their guns and religions. We saw the things about militias, and there was that, what do they call those? It was the fusion centers. Remember, that was a fusion center report a few years ago where anybody who was patriotic could be considered a terrorist. And I mean, this is not the first time that they've lumped average Americans who just want to be left alone and just want to have their gun rights or just want to, just want to be patriotic. It's not the first time they've lumped them in to be like to warn everybody that these are anti-government extremists, right?
Yeah, and the way that we fight back is we just have to say no, right? We're not extremists, right? We are literal civil rights advocates advocating for our civil rights, and the Second Amendment is no more, no less important than other amendments, right? Other civil rights in our Constitution. We want equal rights, and so this is the classic example of a government basically demonizing a certain subset of its citizens and trying to pit us against one another. And it's obviously not for any good reason. And again, we have to reject this notion that, right, we're somehow the bad guys
It's
because
like
of our belief in the Second Amendment.
It's gaslighting on a governmental scale, right? This is like governmental gaslighting. Oh, you're all bad people. What? I mean, I just want to be left alone. And
exactly.
I just want to know. All right. Well, hold on a second. We're 10 seconds out. We're going to rejoin the radio here. Chris Cheng is our guest. I didn't even ask him what he wanted to talk about because I'm so riled up about this. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. You know what time it is. It's time for the murder guns. Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
What the hell's an assault weapon?
If we could just figure out how to get all of the murder guns and the attack guns and not keep selling those to people and just sell protection guns, I think that would be great and solve a lot of problems.
Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Duke Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
A man that has absolutely no murder guns to his name. They're all protection guns. I guarantee it. They're guardian guns, protection guns, right? Chris, no murder guns, no attack guns in your house, right?
Just guardian guns. Exactly. I specifically asked the gun shop folks, I want the guardian guns.
That's right.
Please, no murder guns.
I'm sorry. I need a protection gun. I don't want an attack gun. I just want a protection gun. And if you could smudge it with a little sage to make sure that it's got the right spirit, I'd be okay with it. It's all fine.
Wave some of those special rocks and crystals.
Yeah, exactly.
Too. Please.
Gotta put crystals on it, and we're gonna do it all. We joke about it, but that's again the anthropomorphizing of the firearm as if somehow it is the ultimate arbiter of what people do. The old saying is, throw that pistol on a table and leave it there and don't touch it and walk away, and the house will fall down around it before it gets up and shoots anybody by itself. Right? It's the people. It's a tool like any other, but boy, all you see is the interview with the gal who's like, my Johnny, he was a great boy until he got that gun, and then he turned into a demon, kind of thing. Well, no, Johnny was a demon before. You just didn't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Until he got some power over other people, and then you see his true nature come out. Anyway, Chris, we were just talking about this thing in the National Register or National Review, talking about how the feds are now likening gun control and open border opponents to violent extremists. They're actually going to financial institutions. They're asking for people, for them to FineSend is asking for merchant category codes. They've created new ones. They're checking terms like MAGA and Trump and guns and patriots and all these other words. And they're lumping us all into this stew because again, I'm not a Trump fan. That's not my jam, but I would be lumped in with anybody who is super pro MAGA because we both happen to like guns or believe in our Second Amendment rights. And yet they're lumping us all together. This is a scary time, my friend, in that regard. This is kind of a scary time, especially with the interconnectivity of technology and the power that they have to see into our lives.
Yeah, exactly. And it harkens back to the days of McCarthyism, of the government just hunting down certain types of Americans with particular types of beliefs. Um, and so this is different though, right? This is about protecting a civil right, right? This is our Second Amendment right. This is for gun owners. We're not advocating for violence, right? In fact, we're advocating for the complete opposite, right? Which is for a more
Absolutely.
secure country, a more secure
Absolutely.
state, right? Empower me as an individual to protect myself and my family, my community, so we don't have to overburden law enforcement. And this is it's you're right. I mean, the big difference between now and any time in the previous generations is the internet, right? Everything we say and we do, right? We have phones that are listening to pretty much every word that we're saying, even when we're not explicitly talking to them. And then everything we're posting online. AI is another technology that could get particularly frightening, where instead of having humans coming through this material, I can easily imagine an AI algorithm, right? That's just a supercharged search engine, essentially, right? That is a sentinel going out, looking and listening, right, for certain types of chatter. And you just keep going on here around there's going to be false positives, right? The government's going to falsely identify extremists, and there's going to be lawsuits. I mean, it's going to be a mess. Now, as a technologist, I will say technology is inevitable, right? All technology is inevitable. And so
Right.
it's a
Right.
matter of, do we open Pandora's box now or later? And my personal opinion as a technologist is we should open it up sooner. Now, it doesn't mean that we should irresponsibly open up the box without thinking about the implications and planning for it. So I think AI, like OpenAI, they've done a very good job of planting seeds about, well, here are the pros of AI, but here are the cons, right? AI is not no technology is 100% good,
Right.
right? I was reading a book the other day, and I had this great analogy where they basically said, when you invent the ship, you also invent the shipwreck.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay, that's a good one. That's
technology,
yeah.
right, is exactly that, right? Every new technology that comes out, every new product, it's like, look, like it can be used for good or for evil.
There's a dark side to every technology. Absolutely.
Exactly right. Whether we're talking about alcohol,
Firearms, right?
firearms.
Right. It applies to firearms too, because with each side there's a protection, and then there's the murder side of that whole thing.
Those murder guns.
Those murder
gotta,
guns,
gotta get those
But
murder
you're right.
guns.
Technology is inevitable. I mean, could you imagine having the McCarthy hearings today with the technology and the interconnectivity that we're seeing in every aspect of our lives today? A McCarthy type hearing where they started calling average Americans onto the carpet, and yet could look into every aspect of their life at the level with the data mining and everything else. I mean, again, it's pretty spooky, but you're right. We need to figure out a way to, to get to this technology and open it up enough that we could see the true pitfalls of it and not act like, oh, don't worry, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, and right, government is using AI, and they will continue to use AI. And like we've been talking about here, technology can be used for good or for evil. The government, just by nature, the government's going to want to become more powerful, right? And
Right.
especially with technology, it's so easy for the government to become more powerful and collect more data about all of us, make decisions about not just our individual rights, but our collective civil rights as well. Clearly, anti-gunners are on a constant agenda of trying to attack the Second Amendment, trying to attack responsible gun owners from every angle, like the credit card codes that you mentioned, right? That this is a new attack,
Right.
right? Of
Yeah.
credit card codes being applied to firearms and ammunition purchases, and now Congress is subpoenaing credit card records to try and identify people who are purchasing firearms. Like, why, right? Why does the government need to know that information about all of us And so AI is just a whole nother layer of how the government could really, well, they will supercharge themselves, right, using technology and AI, because it's going to be, my personal belief is AI is going to be affordable. It already is affordable. You can make deep fakes of deep fake audio and video for dollars. I mean, I did it to a friend the other day. I created this fake audio clip of her saying she loves country music, and she hates country music in real life. So that was I did it as a joke, right? But the quality was so good. It was
what can bad actors do, and what can we do to prevent it? I mean, it's a scary, scary time. Chris Cheng, less than 60 seconds here. Anything else that people or places that go follow you, things you're doing? What do we got?
Yeah, well, if you want to follow me on social media, and in particular, I'm going to be talking a little bit about my heavy metal toxicity in a little bit. All the shooting I think I did about a decade ago has resulted in some pretty bad toxic levels of lead in my system. And so, yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that on social media. You can follow me at Top Shot Chris, primarily on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll do so. And next time we'll talk about that specifically. Okay, my friend?
Sounds good.
It's good to see you. Thank you so much for coming out. We got to go.
Hold the line.
Yeah, hold the line for just a second, Chris. I'll be right back to you. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Willie Waffle up next.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Let me go back. I didn't mean to yoink him off the screen there. Hey, you okay? Everything okay? You have some health things going on?
Long story short, the past 10 years, it's been a whole plethora of symptoms, ranging from GI issues to cognitive issues, cardiovascular stuff. And my doctor farmed me off to all these specialists. I take their tests and I come out clear, and they're like, nothing's wrong with you. And I push back and say, no, clearly something's wrong with me. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago when I started seeing an integrative medicine doctor, also known as like an osteopath, which is a very different approach to medicine. And he gave me a different test for lead. So I initially took in a blood test, and blood tests apparently are not the gold standard for lead testing. And so it's actually a urine test with an IV drip before the test to chelate the heavy metals out of your system, so they'll actually show up in these tests. And so my lead levels, it was lead, mercury, tin, and aluminum. I mean, they were through the roof. And so the recovery process has been very slow, sort of intended, to be slow. I've been getting treatments for about 18 months here. But things are better, thankfully. I'm happy to report. But it's been one of these like kind of silent killers. I mean, like I just, I just have not been feeling, I haven't been able to operate at 100%. I've been operating at like 70% capacity for so many years. Fatigue all the time, brain fog, memory issues. And it's like, I'm only 44 years old. And it's not time for cognitive and memory issues at my age.
Did you do a lot of shooting indoors? Did you do a lot of, or is this,
No. So, when I was doing 3-gun and USPSA shooting, it was mostly outdoor. And, USPSA was all handgun, but 3-gun was, handgun, shotgun, and pistol. I've been talking to some of my friends, and the hypothesis at I was very careful in terms of like washing my hands, washing my clothes, right after the range, keeping my hands away from my mouth and my nose, while I'm shooting, kind of thing. But so the hypothesis is, with my AR, if you shoot a lot of AR rounds, you get gas blowback through the charging handle, and your nose is sitting right near that opening.
Right. You're inhaling it as you're breathing, as it's going through the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I was shooting, 10,000 rounds a year for 4 years, and that's just of 5.56, right? Shooting a lot of shotgun as well, and there's lead in most primers. Handgun was probably less of an exposure, but also I was shooting a lot of steel targets, and then when lead bullets hit steel plates, they fragment, and some amount of lead is getting thrown into the air. Again, I think the gas blowback from all of my AR rifle shooting is probably the likely candidate, but it's hard to tell at this point. I mean, it's been over 10 years. I'm testing out some lead-free frangible ammunition right now, so it's lead-free ammo and lead-free primers. And I had some initial good tests last weekend, and I want to keep on testing it out, and hopefully I'll be able to continue to keep shooting and stay healthy and have fun, which is the goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see, because I would be interested to do that test to see where I'm at on the medal count. And I know there's people that even shoot a lot more than I do. But even on my best, I don't think I was shooting 10,000 rounds a year. So, but yeah, that is definitely worrying, especially for somebody who's as young as you are, for something like that. So keep us in the loop and let us know. Maybe this is something that we should, this is something that I think that the community should be paying it more attention to, I guess, especially for competitors or people who do a lot of shooting or their own reloading, et cetera, is something we should really be paying attention to.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm happy to talk more about it and share my learnings as, I continue on this healing journey. And also, I definitely want to help prevent others from suffering what I've been suffering from for the past 10 years. And it's been rough. It's been rough. And, finally, once I discovered, toxic levels of lead have been a key contributor to so many of my symptoms, it's been a big relief.
Well, Chris, stay healthy, my friend. Let's talk more about this next time, okay? I appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on, my friend. It's good to see you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, that means my phone is buzzing, and it's time. It's time for Willie Waffle, wafflemovies.com. Let's get into it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things. And we're going to talk about Rust and more. It's all right. Now, here we go. That's the deal. Okay, you ready? Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready for Friday to be over already, but it's just starting. But that's okay. The best part of my Friday is right here. Willie Waffle, wafflemovies.com. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Let me be your little taste of Red Bull today. We'll get you through the rest of the day.
It's weird. I don't want to think. What flavor of Red Bull are you? That'd be weird.
I don't know.
Waffle flavored? I'm waffle flavored. Yeah,
I would hope I'm some sort of diet cherry flavored.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like one of those Jones. Remember when Jones Soda put out the whole Thanksgiving pack, and they actually had soda that was like mashed potatoes and turkey.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, who wants to drink that? Not me. I'm not drinking a waffle flavor Red Bull. Sorry. I'm as much as I love you, brother. It's just not gonna happen.
Well, and the scary part is, they cannot make that flavor naturally in a soda.
Yeah.
So like whatever chemicals they put in there, that's in your body now. So good luck.
Forever. It's there forever. All right. Well, let's dive in and get cracking here. We got some stories to go over. I mean, the Oscars is on Sunday. Do I care? Does anybody care, Willie? Does anybody care?
I think you're going to see a little bit of a bounce back. I think, not like a massive one. The Oscars will never have the 40 and 45 ratings that they used to have back in the day. But, we did see an increase last year. We saw an increase at the Grammys this year. So, there is maybe a little bit of a return to people having an interest in watching the award shows. But I think the difference between the Grammys and the Oscars is that, like, the Grammys, they promise you all those big musical productions and all the
Right.
performances, and you want to see those because you're not really going to see them anywhere else. The Oscars, while they're going to have the performances of the best songs, and I think right now they're trying to really just get everybody excited for them to do the Barbie song. That should
Oh,
be kind of
everybody's
funny.
excited, huh? That's the thing.
Yep. But I don't know if I mean, listen, their theory was if we nominate really popular movies, people will watch again. So Oppenheimer's nominated, Barbie's nominated, some other stuff, and they're really hoping that maybe the numbers will be something special. Yeah, it'll probably be the same old, same old. And I don't see Jimmy Kimmel as being the kind of host who's going to do anything daring or crazy. He's pretty much said he's not going to do anything daring or crazy. So
Yeah.
it's just going to be an okay show.
And Kimmel is just, I don't know. He's, well, my opinion, the few times that I've seen him do something, he's just not a very good MC. I mean, he's just it's just, he's adequate, I guess is what is that too damning? You're adequate at your job?
No,
I mean,
I think that's honest. I think that's honest. I mean, there's a reason why Jimmy Kimmel is like the number 3 host in late night television. I mean, he's solid. He'll do a funny joke here or there, but he's not going to change the world. He's not going to revolutionize things. He's going to just be a solid host, and that's all he's trying to be.
yeah, well, that's okay. So I guess we'll see what happens. But like you said, there's not a lot, there's not a lot of fanfare. There's not a lot of pomp. There's not acts. There's not whatever. I guess we'll have to see how it turns out. All right. We're moving over to, oh man, Baywatch. Slow-mo. Remember? Oh my God. You're just like a kid. Were you the kind of guy that DVR'd Baywatch and then watched it in slow frame by frame? Is that you?
Okay, no, I never recorded it or watched it on video or played it in slow motion, but I knew what time it was on every week. And my roommate and I may have sat there and watched the acting stylings of Mr. David Hasselhoff.
Yes.
And his dramatic stories of the adventures that they had as lifeguards there on the beach in California.
The Hoff.
And that is the legend that lives on, my friend. And that is why Fox Television is getting in the Baywatch business. They have announced, yes, they're working on a reboot of Baywatch. And let's be honest, we all know why people watched Baywatch. It was for all those stunning shots of everybody running in slow motion.
Oh, hey,
it made Pamela
watching
Anderson a massive star.
I was watching for the Hoff. I mean, no, I can't say. I can safely say that I have never seen a single episode of Baywatch. So I dodged that bullet.
Whereas
apparently.
I may have seen every single one of them.
Okay, all right. There you go. Okay. It tells what kind of people we are. That's it. It tells the whole story.
Yeah.
So they're going to redo it. Any word on who's doing what or what the stars are?
No idea on who or anything else. I don't know if you can get David Hasselhoff involved at this point. I think they'd probably just have to start with a whole fresh crop of young up and coming actors and actresses who want to make their mark on Hollywood. So yeah, we'll have to see who they bring in. Although if there's one person that they might bring in, and that you always bring in on a TV show when you need a solid star who might surprise you.
Right.
I'm going out on a limb. I wonder if they're going to get Rob Lowe to be in this thing.
Yeah. I was thinking John Stamos, but Rob Lowe.
John Stamos would be really good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think because Stamos has got enough cheese to let it go. You know what I mean? But all right. Well, we'll see what happens there. Okay. I know you got a couple other ones, but it's, I'm not much of a Big Bang fan and Jamie Foxx, but I want to get to this thing on Rust because we talked about it a little bit earlier this morning, but you and I, it turns out, have been watching a lot of the same things and watching these, the court proceedings, which, dude, it's like crack. You start watching it, you're like, what? You're getting this behind the scenes thing on what's going on in this movie. What a hot freaking mess. Now, of course, the big news, she's convicted of manslaughter.
Yep.
She dodges the bullet on the evidence tampering thing, but she got the manslaughter. The craziest part is they remanded her back to custody before the sentencing. I mean, this is not a murder charge. This is a but she's going to stay in jail for like a month and a half because they're not going to sentence her till May. And I'm like, what? I mean, that's just, wow. So give me your thoughts on here. What you saw, what you watched.
My theory is there's a lot of conversations going on between her lawyer, and the prosecutors right now to see how much that she's going to help take down Alec Baldwin. I think that's why she's been remanded to custody. I am not a lawyer. I do not have any inside information, but that to me would be a bargaining chip. I could see it happening because I bet it would happen on Law and Order. Darn it!
Right. So they're holding her in
I
jail to sweat her a little bit to make her more amenable to
sweat her
some
out
kind
a
of
little
appeal.
bit.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's say, do you want to testify against Alec? Alec's the reason you're here. So it'll be interesting. But I'm with you. This case was why. I mean, this just. I mean, listen. Every time I've ever heard about what goes on a movie set, it usually ends up with, and this thing is a disaster. This movie's going to be a disaster. The production's a disaster. This place really was. The what we've seen on the set of Rust is that it was just out of control. I mean, just there were people just doing stupid things left and right, and I think what really ended up getting Gutierrez convicted. I mean, she did play up very hard and try to put the blame on Alec Baldwin and the producers, and saying that they were rushing me and they weren't letting me do my job. And we're finding out, like live bullets had been on the set for days before she even had an idea about it. I mean, it's just other wild, crazy stories that were going on, and I really just I feel bad for her, for our deceased person's family. I mean, just to hear about just the horrible disregard that they had for a lot of the safety precautions, and a lot of the I mean, a lot of the responsibility that was put upon her that she seemed to have just not lived up to.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of responsibility. They had her wearing two hats. She was doing two things. And then they made it pretty clear, the impression that even though the armor is supposed to have the last say about safety on set, they made it pretty clear that she had no authority or power there. She couldn't call a halt. She couldn't do anything. You might be right. I hadn't really considered that maybe they're going to sweat her for another plea deal. Now, David Hall, the producer or the assistant director, he already copped a plea, and he's testifying on their behalf already. So maybe they see this as a twofer. This would be interesting. I mean, yeah.
No, I was going to say, we even though she was the one on trial, you could see the prosecutors were already lining up their Alec Baldwin trial, because they were playing the videotapes of him acting in a very irresponsible manner, pointing the gun around like it was a pointer instead of realizing it is a dangerous weapon that is in his hands.
Right.
Kind of portraying him as trying to rush everything and rush her through her job. I think that's really the person that they're aiming for. And I don't know. I still think it's ultimately her responsibility as the armorer to make that set safe, no matter what the cost.
Yeah.
And that easy for me to say, and easy for all of us to say, because let's be honest, all of us are working people, and we've all been made to do something by our boss that we didn't want to do.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, this was not evil or malicious. It was just, youth and inexperience and an accident from her perspective. But Baldwin, who is ultimately in charge, and his production company should be held responsible for what's going on because of her. I mean, you're finding about all this other stuff that's going on. Anyway, it's crazy, but there we go. All right, let's get over to, oh God, do I have to? The movies.
It's not a stellar lineup this week. I won't lie to you.
You got two here. Hit me with it. You run the boat here. Go ahead.
All right. I'm going to lead off with the one that I know most of us aren't very interested in, and that would be the Kung Fu Panda 4. That's right, 4. The fourth Kung Fu Panda movie. The first one came out in 2008.
Jeez.
That's a long time ago,
16 years, man. They're still milking that cow.
Oh, they're milking it, and they have made this the kids franchise du jour, man. Between this, the toys, the TV series, I mean, they're just raking in the money. And I hate to say it, but this fourth one really just feels like they're raking in the money. Okay, here we are. Jack Black is back as our panda, but now he's been told that it's time for him to stop being the Dragon Warrior and to be the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace, to bring calm to the valley. But he has to find himself a replacement. And while all this is happening, guess what? An evil villain emerges who wants to take over the whole valley. And the Kung Fu Panda is going to have to stand up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course he is. Of course he is. Well, so it's in theaters. What, I mean, am I missing anything?
We're at 1.5 waffles. This is a movie going through the motions, my friend. Oh, we'll get the wisecracking sidekick in here. Oh, we'll do some silly, out of control jokes about how the panda is out of shape and a little chubby. Oh, we'll have him do all of his action kung fu scenes. And most importantly, we're going to sell some toys, people. Sell lots of toys.
Lots of toys. All right. Well, I mean, the first one was great. We watched it, but I mean, again, that was 2008. My kids were still in the house. We were still, I was still, okay, God, I got it. All right. We're on to the next one. Ricky Stanicky. I don't know which one it is.
Ricky Stanicky. This is a new Prime Video movie from Amazon, and it's kind of a crazy movie. It's supposed to be outrageous. It's supposed to be like The Hangover. It's these three childhood friends, one of which is Zac Efron, and all of their lives they've been blaming everything on the imaginary Ricky Stanicky. They made him up, and every time they can use him as an excuse to get out of some responsibility or to sneak away and party. Well, Ricky was the reason.
Okay.
And now they've got themselves in a bind. Everybody feels it's time to meet Ricky Stanicky. Like, their wives and their parents and all these people who realize that, we've never met this man who's such an important part of their lives. And now they're forced to hire an out of work, kind of down on his luck actor, played by John Cena, who's going to embody Ricky Stanicky.
Oh no. No.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this has the makings of some mayhem. It sounds kind of good. I mean, the premise, I'm down with the premise. I've never heard this before. I love something that's kind of cool. So give me the rundown.
I think it's a movie that needs more laughs, but it's passable. I think a lot of it is John Cena. I'm sorry. I think John Cena is a very, very, very funny actor.
Oh, he is hysterical.
And I think that, he does a wonderful job, kind of being this outrageous, crazy guy who's just, down on his luck, completely off the reservation, man, off the island. Okay. Like, he is just an idiot. And yet he finds his way to make it all work. And I think the early parts of the movie are the more entertaining parts, where they're getting to meet this guy, where they're coming up with the whole kind of ruse to get him involved. And then, it kind of starts to maybe try to get a little bit more serious. You realize, hey, they're going to have to find some way to resolve this story because, they're not going to get away with it forever, are they? And I think that's where it kind of slows down. I think that's where it loses some of its laughter. I'm at about 2 waffles. And you know what? Since it's on Prime, and if you're a Prime customer, it's free anyways. Hey, watch it for 2 hours and just understand it's going to be a raunchy one.
Yeah. Well, that'd be fun. John Cena is funny, though. Man, my God, the whole Suicide Squad and the Peacemaker and all that. I mean, it is just hysterically funny. So, all right, well, I'm in for that for sure. Willie Waffle, wafflemovies.com. Thank you, my friend. It's good to talk with you. We will see you next week, okay?
See you next week.
Folks, out of time. Monday, Sarah Montalbano, and more. We'll see you then. Be kind, love one another, live well. I mean, props at least for the premise of the movie, right? At least it's not a Kung Fu Panda. At least it's not the Hangover 4, right? It's not a reboot of something else. It is. I mean, that sounds like a funny premise. how did these 3 adult guys or 3 adult friends, how did they come up with this, and they blame everything on him? I mean, to their wives, that's crazy.
So, like, to give you an example, I'm not giving anything away, but the movie starts off with one of the guys wants to get out of the baby shower. And so they invent that Ricky needs them. There's some sort of emergency. So they run off, and we see how they document everything very meticulously so that there's a Bible so that everybody knows what the story is and everybody's on the same page, just in case they start getting questioned about this or things start coming together. We see all the ways they go out of their way to avoid just being good adults. And in a movie like this, that means you're going to get your comeuppance eventually.
How much effort has gone into dodging something that they could have just gone through? You know what I mean? That's one of those things where the avoidance is more work than the actual task or effort. I'm not going to clean my room. I'm going to do all this other stuff. And it's the same thing the kids got. You're like, man, you've put more effort into dodging this than just cleaning your room. Come on, But again, John Cena is. He's got comedic brilliance, and I don't think that's what he wanted to begin with, because he wanted to be like he did some like cheap action movies that were okay, but I think he really found his groove with this kind of dry as dust kind of a comedic. I'm an idiot, but let me, it's so fun. The Peacemaker. I have not laughed so hard in so long watching that movie or watching that series. After watching the movie, I was just like, this is hysterical.
No, I like him. I think he's good. I think, you're right. Originally, the plan was he was going to be an action movie star. He was going to follow the path of The Rock. He was going to be this wrestler who could go and become the next Sylvester Stallone or the next Arnold Schwarzenegger when there weren't a lot of them out there. And he did those movies, The Marine. He was in that series of movies for a while, and I think he just got lucky. I'm trying to remember what was the first movie where they actually cast him in a comedic role, and everybody went, hey, the guy's kind of good at this.
Well, I think it was
dedication.
Do you remember the video series from the kid who was like Fred? That was the kid who was like the spastic kid, and he was always going on about his dad is John Cena, and then John Cena actually eventually ended up in his videos, and then they actually made a movie where John Cena was his dad, and it was the same kind of thing where it was just this dry. I think that really may have been maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember my son, because he was laughing so hard because this kid Fred was just this spastic little spindly stick kid with a bowl haircut who'd just go on and on about blah blah blah, and John Cena's my dad and blah blah. And then one day John Cena actually shows up in the videos, like they hooked up, because this kid had a huge following. And anyway, I guess that's just my there's your internet trivia for the day, but it's crazy. He is great at that comedy, and I'm glad that he found his niche.
Yeah, and I think, the one thing that I'm a little disappointed in, and this is something you and I talked a little bit about, John Cena has a movie that has been essentially destroyed by Warner Brothers Discovery. It is the Coyote versus Acme movie, which, very controversially, the company decided to take a tax write-off.
Yeah.
And instead of releasing it, or instead of selling it to another buyer, they are going to let this movie dry up and die. And everything I've ever heard about it is that it is one of the funniest movies you've seen. It is a wonderful mix of animation and live action. The joke of the movie being that the Wile E. Coyote finally sues the Acme company because everything he buys from them doesn't work to catch the road runner.
Oh man.
And now he wants to get his recompense.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna have to go.
I want to see this.
I'm gonna have to go search the dark web to see if there's a bootleg release of this thing somewhere, because that sounds funny.
It sounds hilarious, and what happened was they originally kind of made kind of a sneaky, sly kind of announcement that they're gonna shelve this thing for tax purposes, and there was a lot of outrage in the animated community and other creators who work with Warner Brothers and Discovery, and they said, listen, I don't want you to do this to my movie. You did it to the Batgirl movie, now you're doing it to this movie. I don't want to put my efforts into this and frankly lose money because you guys decide to play tax games with it.
Right, exactly.
And so they were shamed into trying to find a buyer and had a showing and there was some interest from Amazon, and I can't remember what the other company was that had some interest, but they could smell the blood in the water.
Yeah.
And the rumor is they made a low offer, one that Warner Brothers was not going to take. And so now they've just gone back to the original plan of basically throwing a movie in the garbage that I think a lot of people would have liked to have seen.
Yeah, that's too bad.
So,
all right, well, Mr. Waffle, thank you, my friend. What's next week?
That would be Mark Wahlberg in Arthur the King.
Okay. I mean, I like me some Mark Wahlberg. Have you ever seen Mile 22? Mile 21? Mile 22?
I must have. Which one is that one? Is that the one where that's not the one where he's on the oil tanker, is he?
No, that's the one where they have to get an asset out of like Colombia or something, and they've got to do a caravan through 22 miles of basically bad guys to get him to the airfield.
I have not seen this.
You should watch.
Oh, now I have something. Okay.
Yeah, that's Twisty. That is Twisty, and that's the last Wahlberg movie that I think I watched. I heard about it, and I'm like, I got to go watch that. It's really good. It's enjoyable.
That reminds me of a movie he did very early in his career called Three Kings.
Yeah.
Where it was him, Clooney, and another guy that were trying to sneak Saddam's gold out of the desert as the war was ending.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that one. Yeah, you should go watch that. I think it's Mile 22, okay. I think. Anyway, go check it out.
Right.
You'll have to give me a report next week. All right, Willie Waffle, thank you, my friend. Good to talk with you. We'll see you later.
See you later.
Folks, done, out of time. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.